On a night in July 1950, inside the offices of the CCP Northwest Military and Political Commission, Zhang Zongshun and his old comrade Xi Zhongshun were drinking together, sharing the joy of the birth of Zhang's youngest son. Thousands of kilometers away, in a small village, another baby had just turned 4 months old. His father was an anti-Japanese militia member, and bullet holes from those years still marked the earthen walls of their home. What neither family could have imagined was that the lives of these two children would one day become tightly intertwined, like a pair of twin stars. They were Zhang Yuxia and Zhu Qiliang. One was a red second generation, born into a prestigious revolutionary family. The other came from poverty, yet was a chosen one of fate, eventually becoming a favored son of the Chinese Communist Party. The life trajectories of these two men perfectly reflect the development of the Chinese Communist military over the past half-century. Today, we will tell the story of this pair of twin stars, Zhu Qiliang and Zhang Yuxia, and reveal the underlying logic and hidden truths behind the current round of fierce internal struggle within the CCP military. Before we begin, please like and share the program. Thank you for your support. In 1966, at the age of 16, Zhu Qiliang walked more than 100 li to apply for a military academy. In his backpack were Sun Tzu's Art of War, other military texts, and sweet potatoes. He was successfully admitted to the Air Force Aviation School to study flying. Over the 10 years following his graduation in 1969, Zhu served as a pilot in the Air Force's 8th Corps on the Fujian front, rising step by step from squadron commander to group commander. By 1978, he had already become a regimental chief of staff. During the 1979 Sino-Vietnamese War, Zhu was ordered to fly with his unit to an Air Force base on the Guangxi border, where they comprehensively suppressed the Vietnamese Air Force and ensured air superiority. In 1983, at just 33 years old, Zhu became commander of the 26th Air Division, making him the youngest aviation division commander at the time. In 1984, he was promoted again to deputy commander of the Air Force's 4th Corps. At the 35th anniversary National Day military parade that year, Deng Xiaoping personally reviewed the troops. Zhu Qiliang piloted an aircraft leading a formation roaring over Tiananmen Square, a perfect demonstration of the superb flying skills he had accumulated over many years. Zhang Yuxia, by contrast, was tough from a young age, undefeated in arm wrestling. He also loved playing basketball, often dribbling the ball and shouting, "Who rules this vast land? We do!" The young Pingzi from Uncle Xi Zhongshun's family could never beat him, because his hands were too small to grip the basketball. Xi Jinping later recalled, "I couldn't do it. My hands were too small to grip the basketball. Football was fine." After graduating from Jingshan Middle School in 1968, Zhang Yuxia chose to enlist in the army. At that time, Zhang Zongshun had already been purged, and in the ensuing chaos, Zhang Yuxia joined the 14th Army of the Kunming military region. At the time, the commander of the Kunming military region had been rescued and sent to Beijing, the political commissar had been assassinated, and the entire region was in turmoil. In 1971, Zhang's father was rehabilitated and successively served as deputy commander of the Jinan military region and minister of the General Logistics Department. In 1979, Zhang's father's old friend Yang Deji, also from the 1st Field Army, became commander of the Kunming military region and took charge of the Western Front in the war against Vietnam. He brought with him from the Wuhan military region an operations director named Liang Guangli, who became the actual commander of the Western campaign. Zhang Yuxia performed outstandingly in this war and was promoted to regiment commander in 1983, 2 ranks behind Zhu Qiliang. When the Laoshan campaign broke out in 1984, Zhang once again distinguished himself in combat and was promoted to deputy division commander. More importantly, during this campaign, Zhang Yuxia met Liang Guangli, who later became a crucial patron in his career. Beginning in 1984, due to military reform requirements, all officers at or above regimental level were required to attend military academies. The two men, one after the other, entered the National Defense University's basic program for 3 years of study. Zhang Yuxia graduated just as Zhu Qiliang entered the academy. Fate caused them to narrowly miss becoming classmates. After graduation, both embarked on new promotion trajectories, though at very different speeds. In 1990, Zhang Yuxia was promoted to commander of the 40th Motorized Infantry Division. By then there was no war, and his combat strengths had little opportunity to stand out. Zhang Yuxia remained hot-blooded. He once wrote a report to then Navy Commander Liu Huaqing, proposing the establishment of a Blue Water SEAL-style Special Operations Force, and even volunteered himself as its commander. Meanwhile, Zhu Qiliang, as a rising star carefully cultivated by the Air Force, had already entered a rapid promotion track. After 3 years of study, he became Chief of Staff of the Air Force's 8th Corps, then in 1990 its commander, once again 2 ranks above Zhang Yuxia. Entering the 1990s, Zhu Qiliang's streak of fortune burned even brighter. In 1992, Jiang Zhen became vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and Deng Xiaoping personally instructed him to cultivate a new generation of successors in their 40s and 50s. Xu Zhiliang was fortunate enough to be included on this list. In the brief span of 1993 to 1994, he changed positions 3 times in succession, moving from commander of the 8th Air Corps to deputy chief of staff of the Air Force, then to chief of staff of the Air Force. In one leap, he became a deputy-level commander of a military region, completing the transition from corps-level to region-level leadership. In 1999, Xu was promoted to deputy commander of the Shenyang military region and concurrently served as Air Force commander. More importantly, during his tenure with the 8th Air Corps, Xu was stationed in Fuzhou, where he came to know Xi Jinping, then secretary of the Fuzhou Municipal Party Committee and first secretary of the Fuzhou Military Subdistrict Party Committee. Xi Jinping had once served as secretary to Defense Minister Geng Biao and placed great importance on relations with the military. He often drank heavily with Xu Zhiliang. Xu could drink 2 gin of Moutai without getting drunk. Xi could handle more than 1 gin himself. The two became close friends, laying the groundwork for future cooperation. Zhang Yuxia's promotions, by contrast, were far less smooth. He became deputy commander of the 13th Group Army in 1994 and succeeded to commander in 2000. By that time, Yang Deji and his father's other old comrades had passed from the scene, and Liang Guanglie had not yet become a top military leader. Zhang Yuxia had not yet found a new patron and could only continue waiting. In 2003, Liang Guanglie was promoted to chief of the general staff, and both Xu Zhiliang and Zhang Yuxia saw new opportunities. Liang began experimenting with transforming the General Staff Department into a joint operations command. He transferred Wu Shengli from the Navy into the General Staff and reassigned Xu Zhiliang from the Air Force to serve as Deputy Chief of the General Staff. Because the General Staff had always been an army stronghold, this move made Xu the first Air Force officer to enter the highest command system of the entire military, giving him the opportunity to understand overall command operations. In 2005, with Liang's strong backing, Zhang Yuxia was transferred to serve as deputy commander of the Beijing military region, completing this step fully 11 years later than Xu Zhiliang. During the years Jiang Zemin oversaw military affairs, he preferred to promote Guo Boxiong's northwest faction, Xu Chaihu's northeast faction, and the children of revolutionary elders connected to him, such as Liu Yazhou, the son-in-law of Li Xiannian. Neither Xu Zhiliang nor Zhang Yuxia belonged to these circles. During these years, both saw their promotions slow and did not enter the core of the Central Military Commission. Yet, as the saying goes, misfortune may turn out to be a blessing. This period laid the foundation for their later rise. In 2007, Hu Jintao's authority within the military increased significantly, while Xu Kaihu continued to control personnel matters, ushering in an era of multiple power centers within the military. That year brought good news for both men, though along different paths. In September 2007, Xu Zhiliang was appointed commander of the Air Force. During this period, he led an international joint military exercise, gained the opportunity to report directly to Hu Jintao, and won Hu's approval. Zhang Yuxia also participated in this exercise as an accompanying commander, marking their first collaboration. At the 17th Party Congress that year, Xu Zhiliang was elected as a member of the Central Military Commission, becoming one of the military's top leaders. In 2008, a rare snow disaster struck southern China. Facing complex and severe weather conditions, Xu personally directed operations on the front lines, completing the difficult task of emergency air transport of supplies. Later, during the Wenchuan and Yushu earthquakes, Xu commanded the Air Force in major disaster relief efforts, leaving a strong impression on the central leadership. Zhang Yuxia, meanwhile, was thoroughly subdued by the military's unspoken rules. No longer the hot-blooded youth of earlier years, he proactively sent tens of millions to Xu Kaihu, who then held real power over military personnel, finally gaining Xu's recognition. With Liang Guanglie's nomination and Xu Kaihu's tacit approval, Zhang Yuxia was transferred to serve as commander of the Shenyang military region, becoming a full military region-level general. During his 5 years there, Zhang became best known not for military reforms, but for the so-called Northeast model of resolving housing difficulties for military personnel. From their promotion histories, it is clear that although Zhang Yuxia was a red second generation, Zhang Zongxun had been completely marginalized since 1978 and had lost influence in CCP politics. In the 1980s, Zhang Yuxia still benefited from the care of some old 1st Field Army comrades. Later, he could rely only on himself. As a combat hero, he found few opportunities to distinguish himself in peacetime, gradually submitting to the military's hidden rules, engaging in corruption and bribery, and aligning himself with Xu Chaihu. Only after Liang Guanglie and Xi Jinping rose to power did Zhang Yuxia finally see his spring. Xu Zhiliang, by contrast, became the system's favored son. From ace pilot to member of the military's succession team, he was first heavily cultivated by the Air Force and then specially groomed by the Central Military Commission, advancing even faster than Zhang. It can be said that the CCP organization itself was Zhu Zhiliang's father. Zhu was selected by the organization first because of his organizational ability and solid military competence. After all, any leader must ensure the ability to win wars. And second, because of his high emotional intelligence and political savvy, enabling him to maintain good relations with top leaders. Around the 18th Party Congress in 2012, Zhu Zhiliang became the second-ranking vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, responsible for political work, while Zhang Youqia became a CMC member and head of the General Armaments Department. Zhu became the chief architect of Xi Jinping's consolidation of personal power, serving as executive deputy head of the Military Reform Leading Group and Xi's primary assistant in military reform, with then first vice chairman Fan Changlong as second deputy. This clearly demonstrated Xi's trust in Zhu. Zhu secretly helped Xi plan an anti-corruption campaign that swept the entire military, strengthening Xi's power and eliminating potential rivals. In the ensuing purges, 2 former CMC vice chairmen were brought down, at least 60 generals were arrested, and more than 13,000 officers were punished. All arrests of senior generals were proposed by Zhu Zhiliang, and the most sensitive cases were personally handled by him. He then assisted Xi in formulating an unprecedented military reform plan. Through this reform, Xi dismantled the 4 general departments, splitting them into more than a dozen functional units, reorganized the 7 military regions into 5 theater commands, established a joint operations command center, and appointed himself commander-in-chief, firmly seizing military power and solidly implementing the system of CMC chairman responsibility. Zhu also personally led reforms of the Rocket Force and Strategic Support Force. At the 19th Party Congress in 2017, Zhu became the first-ranking vice chairman of the CMC, presiding over daily military operations. Zhang Youqia became vice chairman responsible for political work, and the two formally began working as a team. However, Xi also promoted his confidant Miao Hua to head the General Political Department, placing him in charge of personnel matters. During these 5 years, Zhu focused more on studying the Taiwan Strait issue. The 2022 Taiwan Strait exercises achieved seamless coordination among the Rocket Force's precision strikes, the Navy's risk control, and the Air Force's air superiority. Zhang Youqia, meanwhile, focused on eliminating the residual influence of Guo Boxiong and Xu Chaihu, continuing anti-corruption efforts, and strengthening the chairman responsibility system. At the 20th Party Congress in 2022, both Zhu Zhiliang and Zhang Youqia were over the age limit. But due to a talent gap in the military, one veteran was needed as a stabilizing force. Among the 2 peers, Xi chose to retain Zhang Youqia beyond the age limit. This was not because Xi trusted Zhang more, but because Xu had already served 2 terms as vice chairman and accumulated substantial power. Allowing him to remain would risk an imbalance of power, undermining Xi's supreme authority. While retaining Zhang Youqia, Xi rapidly promoted He Weidong from the former 31st Group Army to vice chairman responsible for political work. Since Miao Hua, also from the 31st Group Army, was a key supporter of He Weidong's rise, the 2 officials controlling personnel matters came from the same lineage. In the 5 years after the 18th Party Congress, Xi's core military allies were focused on bringing down Guo Boxiong and Xu Chaihu, eliminating rival factions, and implementing unprecedented military reforms. In the 5 years after the 19th Party Congress, they focused on purging residual Guoshu influence and studying the feasibility of a Taiwan campaign, leaving no time for internal struggles. After eliminating Xi's opposing forces, from the final year of the 19th Party Congress onward, Xi's own camp entered a chaotic internal struggle, resembling a game of du-di-ju. 3 forces sat at the table. The first was Zhu Zhiliang's faction, which promoted many Air Force officers, such as Yi Xiaoguang, commander of the Central Theater Command. Due to his role in integrating the Rocket Force, Zhu also wielded influence there and even served as an advisor after retirement. The second force was Zhang Youqia's faction, favoring officials from the General Armaments Department, the Rocket Force, and parts of the army. The third force came from the Nanjing military region and the former 31st Group Army, including Miao Hua and many naval officers. The biggest player at the table was Xi Jinping himself. All 3 factions were his subordinates, invited by him to play. If he wished, he could kick them all out at any time. The dealer had many enforcers: Zhang Shengmin, head of the Military Discipline Commission, Zhong Shaojun, director of the CMC General Office, and the military's political, legal, and security systems, all loyal to the dealer. Some rumored that Zhang Shengmin was aligned with Zhang Youqia, but this is a misunderstanding. A look at their resumes shows Zhang Shengmin never served under Zhang Youqia. There was no direct connection. Being fellow provincials alone does not make allies. The basic rule of this card game is that there are no permanent alliances. Alliances are formed at the start of each round based on circumstances. Two weaker peasants will naturally unite against a strong landlord, while an overly dominant landlord may attack both peasants simultaneously. Unlike ordinary dudiju, this table has a dealer who is instinctively wary of the strongest player and often assists the weaker side. What the dealer cannot tolerate most is a single dominant faction or collusion between players and his enforcers, which would threaten his position. He prefers at least two evenly matched players. If one plays too aggressively, he intervenes to correct the situation. If one dares to collude with his enforcers, he removes that player from the table. Initially, Miaohua's faction, personally cultivated by Xi, was the weakest, so the dealer favored them. Toward the end of the 19th Party Congress, Zhu Qiliang's faction was the strongest. Having just completed 10 years as vice chairman, he placed many Air Force officers in key positions and enjoyed high prestige. His network included Yi Xiaoguang, Air Force Commander Ding Laihang, Northern Theater Air Force Political Commissar Fan Xiaojun, Armed Police Air Force Political Commissar An Zhaoqing, Joint Logistics Support Force Commander Li Yong, and Joint Staff Deputy Chief Chang Dingqiu. At this time, He Weidong had not yet entered the CMC. Miaohua's faction was the weakest and had to ally with Zhang Yuxia. Coincidentally, the dealer also feared Zhu Qiliang's excessive power and covertly supported the Zhang Miao alliance to weaken Zhu's faction. Yi Xiaoguang was forced to step down early, and many Air Force officers were investigated. Rumors of Zhu Qiliang's downfall emerged during this period. The dealer did not want another major faction to rise after Guo Boxiong and Xu Chaihu, so he tacitly allowed the two peasants to attack the landlord, humiliating Xu but not removing him entirely. At the second round, the 20th Party Congress, Zhang Youxia became first vice chairman, presiding over daily military affairs and emerging as the strongest player. He took control of political and military work, turning the Rocket Force and General Armaments Department into his power base, placing many allies in key departments and becoming the biggest beneficiary of the first round. Many senior positions in the Central Theater Command and Armed Police were filled by Zhang's protégés. Meanwhile, Miaohua's faction elevated He Weidong to vice chairman, gaining control of personnel matters and placing allies in the Discipline Commission, rapidly rising as Xi's new favorite. Zhu Qiliang had retired. Many of his allies were investigated, but having served 10 years as vice chairman, he retained some influence and continued advising behind the scenes. In 2023, the younger Miaohe faction held a strong hand. Eager for achievements and unaware of the game's dangers, they boldly declared themselves the landlord and attacked the other two factions, with Zhang Youxia bearing the brunt. The Rocket Force and General Armaments Department, Zhang's territories, saw numerous officials fall, along with figures like Deputy Chief of Staff Zhang Zhenzhong and Central Theater Deputy Commander Li Zhezhong. These individuals were found to have bribed Zhang Youxia, putting him in an awkward position. Zhu Qiliang was also affected, as many Rocket Force figures were linked to him. This round ended in victory for the Miao faction, which then placed many allies in Zhang's domains. Miaohua installed his confidant, Navy-born Wang Haobin, as Rocket Force commander, and to appease Chu, appointed Air Force officer Xu Shisheng as political commissar. As a symbolic victory, they even persuaded the dealer to replace the House Steward, swapping CMC General Office Director Zhong Shaojun for one of their own. In the third round, the two wounded peasants, Zhang Youxia and Zhu Qiliang, launched a counterattack, gathering evidence and jointly petitioning the dealer. They accused the Miao faction of violating game rules, forming cliques, and colluding with external forces. The dealer was furious, shocked that Miao's faction had placed many enforcers and built its own stronghold, threatening his position, and concerned they might dominate the table and drive others away. He chose to support Zhang Youxia, launching an operation with the Discipline Commission against Miao's faction and overturning many personnel arrangements. This included removing two naval political commissars Qin Shengshang and Yuan Huaji, Eastern Theater Commander Lin Xiangyang, Armed Police Commander Wang Chuning, and Discipline Commission Deputy Tang Yong. As He Weidong was under investigation and Defense Minister Dong Jun briefly cooperated with inquiries, military diplomacy fell solely to Zhang Youxia. For a time, Zhang appeared omnipotent, appearing frequently in defense and diplomatic settings, giving the impression he held military power. In reality, he was only just recovering from earlier blows. The enforcers at the table remained loyal to the dealer, not Zhang. Unexpectedly, at this critical moment, Zhu Qiliang suffered a fatal heart attack while running, completely upsetting the balance of power. With Miao's faction largely fallen and Zhu deceased, only Zhang Youxia remained as vice chairman. A single-player table was unfavorable to the dealer. He urgently needed to cultivate new trusted figures in the political system to counterbalance Zhang. If cards no longer worked, chess would do. Whether a game is fun and how long it lasts depends on its rules. As designer and dealer, Xi Jinping is a traditional power politician, unfamiliar with and distrustful of Western politics, relying instead on traditional Chinese feudal methods. Only by allowing multiple factions within the military to fight can he ensure his safety as arbiter and maintain his lofty position. Only continuous high-intensity anti-corruption can instill deep fear in military cadres, forcing them to trade loyalty for security. Like all dictators, Xi lacks a sense of security. Having witnessed his father being purged twice, he understands the disastrous consequences of losing power. Thus, he suspects every number 2 military figure. He suspected Zhu when Zhu was strong, suspected Zhang when Zhang was strong, and hated Miao and he when they grew strong. This mirrors Mao Zedong in his later years. Mao instinctively distrusted second-in-command figures, Liu Shaoqi, Lin Biao, Zhou Enlai. All were guarded against and dealt with, ultimately predeceasing him. Mao encouraged Gao Gang to challenge Liu Shaoqi, tacitly allowed Lin Biao to attack other military factions, and supported the Gang of Four in persecuting Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping for the same reasons. China's political scene then resembled today's military, chaotic, with one faction rising today and falling tomorrow, leaving ordinary people confused. Though it looks chaotic, the supreme leader understands perfectly. He is the director and dealer of the game, controlling whom to fight and to what extent, with absolute clarity. Viewed through this logic, the chaos becomes clear. That concludes today's program. Thank you all. Creating content is not easy. Please follow, like, and support.